Hello and welcome to Ahead of the Curve. This is your host, Jonathan Gelner, and thank you so much for joining us today. This podcast is powered by Stick and Ball TV, the baseball and softball streaming platform. If you're a coach and you're looking for a resource to help you get better, then Stick and Ball is just for you. With weekly updated videos from some of the best baseball and softball coaches in the country, it's a no-brainer. Check them out at stickandball.tv or on the Stick and Ball TV mobile app. On today's show, we have on Jay Uhlman, hitting and infield coach for Tulane University. A veteran with over 25 years of experience as both an assistant and head coach, Jay begins his third season on Travis Jewett's staff this spring. Uhlman arrived at Tulane after he spent the previous 8 seasons as a member of the University of Oregon staff, where he was the associate head coach for the last 3 seasons. So on the show, we go over some of Tulane's highlights from this fall. We go over what they're doing to prepare for the season, and Jay gives us some insight on how we can develop in season. Here is Jay Uhlman. Jay, welcome to the show.
Jonathan, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, man.
Oh, I'm excited too, and I love the indoor. I love that, you being a hitting guy, you have to do it in the indoor, right? I mean, I love that. I should do that more often. I'm here in the baby room, but you've got a much better backdrop than I do. Yeah,
it's where the real work is done for sure.
No doubt. So let's go over some highlights from you guys this fall, and for the listeners, they got the intro to you. You're in Oregon for a long time, and you've been at Tulane for the last couple of years, and we just finished the fall, and so you guys are getting ready to ramp up for the spring when the rubber hits the road. So if we could rewind a little bit, I'd like to go just over some highlights. I know that most guests that are listening are going to be in their season right now. But what were some different things that you really enjoyed this fall that you guys did that you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
Well, just as kind of a general recap, it was a great fall. I thought we infused the program with a lot of young talent and with other young talent. So we had, some freshman All-American last year. We had some JUCO guys. And so to be able to bring in a lot of talented newcomers definitely was something that the infusion of that energy and talent was needed. When I first got here, we were pretty deep in the pitching staff and we were pretty thin in the position player. So one of the things that I really tried to do in hitting the road recruiting was try to balance that out some more, not take from Coach Latham and reduce his army down in the bullpen, but just to make sure like we could actually have a full scrimmage and not have to borrow an infielder or two to plug the gaps on empty sides of other scrimmage teams. So feel really good about where that's at and that level of talent there. So just a really good fall overall. I thought offensively, a lot of real bright spots. A lot of the older guys came back in great shape. Luis Avilas for sure would come to mind. Bennett Lee. So we've got some good bats in the middle of the lineup and really 1 through 9 that we feel really good about. And then the pitching side of that, certainly when you're replacing 3 starters and a closer from last year's team that had some success and, not ultimate success of getting in the postseason and have an opportunity, to get hot and really run it deep into June. We didn't have that kind of success, but just in terms of the upward trajectory of the program, we certainly had that. And so when you're trying to replace, 4 really good arms, there's always going to be unknowns. So the first thing you can point to is a perceived weakness in terms of pitching, but we don't see it that way. We've got Tyler Hoffman back, who's really transitioned himself, 94, 97 with a real out pitch breaking ball and a developing changeup that's becoming a real threat. Real happy with his development. And, we landed a kid, Dylan Carmouche, who's an in-state kid, but was at Mississippi State last year. We actually got to face him last year when he was at Mississippi State. So getting him in here to, get a starter type guy over the summer was really big for us. We got another kid, grad transfer, Carter Robinson, who we feel like, he's got a track record and pedigree. He was a Sunday guy for ULL. And so we feel like we know what we're going to get there. A good veteran presence that knows how to throw strikes and, manage a game from the mound. So, and there's a lot of others But, I just think just in general, I feel like we're in a really good place after the fall. And then we start officially tomorrow, just like everybody else. And so we're all ramping up for that and real excited about getting going on that journey.
No, I love that. And I love hearing, what you guys are focusing on this fall. And it sounds like you got some new guys in. So I'm curious too, you get a limited time with those guys this fall, and I'm sure you have to do your homework ahead of time, but what are some different things you do when and you went into recruiting on Patrick Jones's podcast, and definitely encourage listeners to go listen to that one as well. But I want to know, how are you evaluating your own players and understanding, okay, we've got a limited time this fall, and so we want to make sure that they're getting the most out of it, but we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to help them to continue to get better, but not they're here for a reason. So how do you balance that? And then just walk us through your evaluation process with your own players.
Sure. So I think with our guys, I think we really try to focus in on the fundamental pieces, the strike throwing, the catch playing, the putting the ball in play, and, just kind of the simple fundamental parts. But, at the end of the day, they're going to be responsible for their development, and we're going to be along that ride and that journey, and we're here to help. And we love doing that. That's why we're here. But I think as they progress each day, each week, each month, as the needle gets closer to February 18th, they're developing a level of trust, not only with how we feel about them and what they do, how they go about their business in a mature way or an immature way. They're developing that with us and what we can count on and rely on. But they're also doing that with their teammates. I think their teammates certainly understand what kind of player they are, what kind of person they are. Can they be counted on? And the players see those kinds of things. So really they're trying to develop that trust level that when they go out either on the mound or in the box, that level of focus, concentration, productivity. Now, it doesn't always mean I'm going to get a hit or I'm going to strike the guy out, but what you're going to get. It's not going to be take a pitcher, for instance. It's not going to be ball 1, ball 2, ball 3, strike 1, strike 2, ball 4 one day. And then the next day it's dial a pitch and it's, 0-2 and bouncing the breaker and elevating the fastball for strike 3. And things are great and Jekyll and Hyde. Those things do happen. And that is part of the process of becoming a young player into a mature player. And so we've kind of got a smorgasbord of those kinds of players that are in certain stages with where they're at in their development. And so I think the thing that you always find is that the young guys always kind of go backwards before they go forward. It's the old 2 steps back, 1 step forward. No matter how talented they are, everything's new. The educational component's new. They're moving to a new city in most instances. They've got new roommates. Mom and dad aren't around to corral them and point them in a direction. They've got to learn a new system, whether it's signs or language. They could, be used to a certain way. And now the game feels a little bit foreign, or the bases seem a little longer, or it's in reality, it's not that the game changes. It's just that the demands on what they're being asked to do, whether it's off the field or on the field, have changed. And so that learning process oftentimes stunts growth and creates some roadblocks that fighters have to get through. And so a lot of times the young guys don't see the fruits of those labors and can't see the forest through the trees until, the season kind of gets going and everything kind of settles in and they start to get a feel for the ebb and the flow of how everything works, how class works during the season, how travel works. They've never been to our conference opponents' fields, so even at the end of the year, although by the end of the year, freshmen are not really freshmen anymore, there's still new things that are presented on their plates. And so, you only get that by experience. And so where you got the guys on the experienced end of that, they've been on bus trips, they've been in the plane, they've been in a travel suit, they know what a full day on the road looks like. And that, yeah, I probably can't stay up till 1 a.m. On the road because it's an earlier wake up call and we've got breakfast and things change. The demands change. Mom and dad are on the road maybe, and they're there, and you got family and friends, and you got to leave tickets, and you want to go to the house and, hang out with your family before the bus leaves, or just things that are different that they're not used to. And so those kind of things tend to get in the way, like I said, whereas you have the veteran guys who kind of have a feel for that. And so they kind of get the head start. They're more knowing, as Coach Jewett likes to say. So typically their trust level from our perspective towards them is usually greater because they've been there, done that kind of thing.
No doubt. I love hearing that. And, it's whenever we change it, it definitely sets us, like you mentioned, sets us back just so we can make sure that we go through all of those things. And unless you've been through it, it's really hard to have experience in it. And so that's interesting to hear you talk about that and talking about especially the preseason that's coming up, because, I feel like, I don't know if college freshmen are like this, but high school freshmen, it's like once that first semester is over, then you see a completely different kid because you've got 4 months under their belt and they're starting to mature and understand the processes of what it's like to be in whatever program they're at. But I'd love to hear, you said that you guys are getting after it tomorrow. What are you guys starting with, and what are you guys trying to hit? And you've got like a month before now and then the start of the season. Yep. So really, what are that does not seem like a lot of time. So really, where are you guys putting the most important things, and what are you doing?
Yeah, never enough time, right? I mean, it's, right. We're getting into that 20-hour phase a week. And so that part's exciting. But I think really for us, getting them back, we were able to get them back on the 15th of January because we didn't have school until this past week. We were able to have a little bit more time with them. And so we were able to really, get their feet underneath them. And kind of what I mean by that, I use my own experience just kind of as a way for you to kind of understand what it's like as I think sometimes we forget what it's like to be a player, but I'll never forget it. I had varying degrees of success in college baseball. And I can tell you this, your coaches always tell you, man, when you go home for that break, don't just sit on that couch and, eat that holiday food and, make sure you come back in shape. And, like the young guys, like, yeah, I totally get it. I'll do that. And, they do it, but they don't really commit to it, but it's just kind of, you think you're working, but you're really, ultimately you're not working where you should work. And so I did that. And then I did it a different way my last year where I had a whole list of routines and, lifting and conditioning and I crushed it. And I felt like, man, I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm ready to come back and I'm going to hit the ground running. And I would tell you that no matter what you do on the positive or negative side of that, coming back, you're always going to be sore. You're not going to be in baseball shape. Thing that a lot of people don't understand is that, baseball's it's a long day. You're there 3 hours before the game. It's a 3.5, 2.5, 4.5, however, there's no time clock. So it could be as long as it needs to be to get an outcome, and then it's post game. And, so it's a lot of hours on your feet and just out and about at the ballpark. So you're not really in that kind of shape when you go away and then come back. And so you're always you're going to be sore. You're going to be tired. You're not going to be in playing shape. You got to get into baseball shape. And that's what the, 4-week phase leading up to, the first game really is all about, is getting in shape and getting, the pitch count up and a lot of swings and a lot of reps and knocking the dust off. And so that's where we were at. And that's always a tough thing because you as a coach, you want them to go, you want them to be perfect, you want them to be in shape and all those kind of things. But in the back of your mind, at least in the back of mine, I always try to remember, like, what was I like as a player? What was I doing as a player? What was I feeling? Like, I get that. And so trying to have that understanding, but still push them to get themselves in shape. And so those are challenges that we all face. And, hopefully the guys that do the most, their ability to not be sore as long that gap shrinks, but the guy who didn't do as much, he's going to have a longer gap to shrink to get back into shape. And so, that's all going to be dependent on each player and what they do and how their bodies are. But, to your question about what we're doing is just trying to get their swings back, knocking off the dust, getting velo training going and speed mix front toss with short bats and pitch and plan stuff and hitting machines and hitting shapes and trying to change their timing and their rhythm by, 3-plate fastballs or even three plate long arm, regular BP arm, and having have them hit 2 from the back, 2 from the middle, 1 from the front, and just have them kind of alternating and changing their spatial awareness and making, pitches get taller the closer they get and shorter, the further they go back, but, seeing shapes and just getting their eyes back in shape really, and their swings and their balance is really kind of where we're at. Like yesterday, or last couple of days, it's been cold by Southern standards. I've coached in 2 places that snow and rain were pretty prevalent this time of the year. So this kind of cold compared to that kind of cold is different. But nonetheless, we chose to come inside and really get in these 3 cages that we have and have different objectives. For us yesterday, I'll just take yesterday for an example. We had,
sure, please do.
Yeah, we had pitch plan in one cage. We had me on a 3-plate live arm, and then in the other cage we had a Hack Attack Junior on medium legs from a short distance, and we have 3 plates always. And that also, it was all hitting from the front, so we're velo training from a short distance to where they got to sneak, they got to get in position, and they got to tighten everything up, get their turn, stay tight to their turn. Have good face angle and making sure their eyes are out to down. We talk about, it's not tipping the head. It's not chin up or leaking the front side. So the eyes are going away. We really hammered them on, the principles of good vision, cause it's easy to break down balance and feet and all those kind of things. But a lot of times, the eyes and the chin are connected to everything we do with the body. So we're really focusing on that. But so the pitch plan thing for us, these machines we have behind us are awesome. They're 8 programs, 8 pitches per program. And, so for instance, yesterday I had a left-handed fastball, breaking ball, and a changeup program, 8 pitches. Some bounced, some were, mid-level, some were his pitches down in the zone, some were, in the penthouse, so to speak, offensively. And so we would go in there and guys would get 2 at-bats. And we'd start 0-0 and they'd declare plan. I'm sitting fastball. Well, breaking ball shows up and it bounces. So instead of just going to like 1-0, we call it first pitch worth 2. So we automatically shift. If it's a ball, it's now 2-0. If he was sitting breaking ball and it was a heater right down the middle, that's strike. We certainly wouldn't want to swing when we're slow rhythm timing. And then the guy shows up with a fastball. We're just going to go ahead and take that. So in that instance, he would go 0-2. And so now the objectives and the plans all change. And so just a nice way to segue quickly into different scenarios and different methodologies in terms of pitch and plan and those kind of things. So just I love these machines because they don't just throw it right down the middle. It's not just, and there's a place for that. There's a place for shape. Sure. Let's see the left-handed, just roll it in there, right-handed, roll it in there, those kind of things. But we really love these machines because we feel like we're going to get our live arm cushy Coach Uhlman BP right down the middle, or, oh, you wanted a little way. Okay, here you go. Those kind of things. Sure. They're going to get that on the field. But in this cage, we want to stress them out. And we also want to encourage them to handle that well. It's not woe is me and, drag your blanket. It's like, let's compete against the ball. Let's understand that we're probably going to get the bat knocked out of our hands sometimes. We're going to be early. We're going to be late, just those kind of things that show up when you've got 8 different pitches programmed. We're trying to get that simulation as close as possible to when they get out there versus that guy when the game counts, that they're more ready for that.
Sure. No, I love hearing that. And I'd love if we could back up and just if you could walk us through a few things with that. So you talked about vision How do you teach that to, let's say I'm a freshman coming in and we're going to go over it for the first time.
Yeah.
What does that sound like? Like, what does your progression look like, I guess?
Sure. So I don't think it's necessarily recreating the wheel. But what we do is early in the fall process is we're gonna break down our rhythms, our dynamic balance, where our chin is through our belly button, between the balls of our feet, and we're trying to land in that position as much as we can. And Coach Jewett's got some really awesome drills that we use in our T workups, especially early in the process. And then really what we try to go to, because I think when you're competing as a young guy, oftentimes, especially when they're younger, they have a harder time with awareness, with knowing their swings. They think they're doing one thing, but they're doing something different. So trying to point those things out to them, like, hey, face came out, face down. When you see it right, yes, good face angle. Like it's not chin out, it's good angle, and the eyes work from out to down. So, those kind of things, we're trying to reinforce those things and praise them when they do those things well. Even if the result off the bat isn't great, if we're trying to really just narrow focus on the vision part, we're really going to applaud them for the things that they do well that way. So, one thing we like to use is if you take the front two corners of the plate, whether you're right or left-handed, we have a cone. We put a ball, a little small cone, and put a little ball on the top, and we place it on the opposite side, front corner of the plate. And what we ask them to do is within their swing, they swing and make contact. And instead of following the flight of the ball, which ultimately, like, just take it as golf. If you're in a par 3 and there's water in front of you, how many times as a hack do you take your swing and as you make contact, you look up to try to find the ball in the hole and it actually ends up in the water? So we're trying to help them help themselves. So putting that ball in that cone down there through a little bit of contact, and then through their finish, trying to find that ball out of the corner of their eye that's on the ground. So they're not just, where'd that ball go? That was a homer. Where'd that ball go? Base hit to right. Just those kind of things. So really just trying to focus and hammer those kind of things to try to help them reinforce it. So A, they know what the objective is, and B, they know how that feels to be able to do that, so that when you're making corrections with them, you're not just saying something and they look at you like, huh? Like they've never heard that before. Try to be really consistent in our message that way.
No, I like that a lot. And you also talked about, developing an approach. And I'd also like maybe in a few minutes talk about different routines. It seems like everybody's got routines, but helping them to develop one that works for them. And we're dealing with teenagers. And so a lot of the kids that I'll talk to about approach, it seems like that is, that's something that is not as prevalent as it was maybe 10 years ago. When, before video and before the swing mechanics revolution. Yep. And that was all that I really got. And so I'm more well-versed in that than I was, that these kids were, and they're way more into the swing than I ever was in the body. Yes. But I would love to hear, how do you help? Because a lot of it, some of it for me is trial and error and trying to test out different things. Yep. But just understanding, hey, if I don't know what pitches that I hit well early in counts, then I'm not going to be a good hitter. And that's really, a lot of that is up to them. But I think they also crave our feedback on trying to help them through, hey, did you notice where that pitch was, or where was that pitch? And getting them to think about it more than just taking mindless reps. But long story long, I would love to hear how you help players with their approach, because I'm sure even from high school, these kids are being the best player on their team and they're getting, curveballs and pitched away consistently, and now they're seeing 92 with sink and then slider away at 86, and it's not easy. And so how do you help them to continue to refine and develop their approach, especially because we're in the preseason now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And positive reinforcement, great. Praise, great. I think kids get that, and I also think they're smart enough to know when praise is false. So I think it's really important for the praise to be directed in a fashion that's usable for them. And if you're unsure of whether there should be praise or nothing said, I always go to like, what do you got on that? Tell me about that swing. Was it deep? Was it in front? Like, did you see it? What, just stuff like you allow them to lead the direction you need to go so that you can help them. Because I could say one thing or feel one thing or know how I feel in my swing or my thoughts, but it could be totally foreign to the other guy. And so, the players kind of teach you more about those kind of things than I actually teach them, I feel like. So
sure, yeah.
like, I'll say, tell me how you feel about that. What part of your body are you using? Like, what are you focusing on to get to your, let's just call it to start on your turn? Like, what are you feeling in your turn? And I might see something, that might trigger that, but he might have a totally different thing where it just blows me away. So I try to get them to tell me so I can kind of help lead them that way. But I think ultimately in like approach and those kind of things, we try to give them who they are. We always start with, kind of introductory things. And one thing that I've learned here that I really, really appreciate, everybody always talks like, know who you are as a hitter, like stay out of the air, or damn, you're really fast and put the ball on the ground. Like those are okay, great, pretty vague. You see homers on ESPN and Baseball Tonight and, they're showing those kind of things. So what we try to really do is group our guys in a way that they have an understanding of what that really means. And Jew is awesome. He's created these football positions that we put our baseball players in. So like running backs and hybrids and tight ends and wide receivers. Nice. And each of those positions have a certain criteria, whether it's, batting average, whether it's on base percentage, it's bunting, it's running, it's skilling, those kind of things. There's certain criteria in each of those positions. And then we fit those guys through the fall where we think that they belong. And then there's also a thing we have in ball flights. Everybody talks about launch angle and all those kind of things. And yeah, that's real and that's not going anywhere. But what we use instead of like the degrees is ball flights. And so you start from 1 and you have 10. So 1's at the bottom where a ball's hit so slow that my 80-year-old grandmother can field it. And the 10 flight is a ball that's basically straight up to the catcher. So everywhere in between, 2 flights, a little bit higher, a little bit harder. 3 is a little bit higher, a little bit harder. 4 is a little bit that low line drive kind of at the bottom of the back of the infield. The 5's through the head. 6 is just above the infield that lands in front of the outfielder. So you get the point, 7, 8, 9. And so, a guy that's a tight end, probably not going to run as well. So when we're training him in his flights and praising him in his flights, we're trying to keep him probably off 1 flights and 2 flights and 3 flights and trying to keep him between maybe a 4 and a 9 flight. And, there's guys that hit a 9 flight that are going to be homers, big, strong guys, those kind of things. And whereas a guy that can really run and is speedy, if he gets jam and rolls a swinging bunt to the third baseman, he got a chance to be safe, So we try to cluster them in those football position groups to kind of give them an identity, but not a vague identity. And it's taken off, and the guys appreciate that. And you'll hear them banter back and forth about running back and tight end and hybrids. And I think somebody actually the other day is begging for like a wide back, the Deebo Samuel kind of guy, So there's kind of those things. So it's cool when their brains kind of flip to those kind of things, and they're invested in trying to maximize who they are as players within their skill sets and their bodies. So that kind of helps in their approach and what they're looking for. And, but it's the vast majority of college pitching is going to be on the outer quadrant of the plate, the fastball away and disarming his best velocity pitch, and being able to have adaptability and adjustability in your swing when you're off. And that, yes, going forward, because going forward is part of is part of hitting back to go forward. But at the point where if you get fooled, to be able to sink the belly button and stretch the hands forward and keep the head down and the lead side on, and keep your chest out over the plate, your margin for error grows. And so we just try to continuously prepare them for those velocities, whether it's 3 plate, it's short distance heater, and those kind of things. And I think approach is going to be dictated to at times by, game situations, which we're trying to replicate here in this cage all the time. And those are all individualistic that we go over with the guys on a daily basis. It's a never ending thing.
No doubt. And, one of the things that before we dive into game planning, I want to talk about just routines. It seems like I mentioned earlier, it seems like every kid has these set things that, get them right, for a lack of more of a scientific sense or phrase, but they've got different things that they want to be able to do. How do you blend, your foundational drills that you do in the fall with the spring, which you're going to spend less about the teaching aspect and more about the competing aspect? And how do you kind of balance that? Because, for me, in my experience, if you do one thing for a certain period of time and they get bored with it, their brain turns off, they're not getting any better, they're just going through the motions.
Yep.
Versus complete randomization where they're in fight or flight almost. But how do you have, or even during the season when they're not feeling right, how do you walk them through just some different things that, that get them feeling back to whatever they felt before? Anything and everything that you've got on that, I would love to hear, because I think that it's a balance that no matter what part of the season, as a hitting coach, you've always got players that are struggling. And so trying to get them to which it's never ending, but getting them to revert back to, okay, this is why I like X, Y, and Z. Yep. And just take it from there if you don't mind. I feel like I'm rambling, but go ahead.
No, it's okay. You had some really good ones in there. You had routine in there. You had randomization, which I'm going to kick back to what we did yesterday and what we typically do in our training because of that, and not getting them bored and keeping them fresh and keeping it fun. And then you had, kind of in-season massaging, maintenance, psychology, which, it's a game based on failure. We all know that, 7 out of 10 times and you're an All-American or you're making a lot of money. And so the failure is inherent in the game, and your ability to continue on through that adversity and failure and be able to laugh, sometimes cry, angry, but try to be able to keep those all in perspective. Very challenging and very difficult, and it's not just go out there and smash the ball, which sometimes it is, but there's other factors that go with that. But let me kind of start with the routine part.
Sure.
Incredibly invaluable. I as a hitting coach, I try not to get in the way of everybody's individualization. Guys need different things. But what we really try to stress with them is the thing that you control is what you do. You can't control the umpire talking to you, the crowd, the weather, the distance of the field, how quick the pitcher's trying to pitch you, how slow he's taking to pitch you. He won't throw you a fastball in these counts, and he just keeps throwing you curveballs because you're a pinch hitter, and he's going to feel sorry for you and just throw you a curveball, or throw you a fastball because you're just coming off the bench. He's trying to get you out, and so being able to have something that you can go to that's yours, that you can control, and then have adaptability within that routine, I think are really important. Pitchers like to work fast. Some do. Some work really slow. Those are the comfort level guys, the old put your wool slippers on, the guy that takes 28 seconds in between pitches, and it's a real deliberate, methodical delivery. And those guys are comfortable. But when you got the guy out there that's got, 4 pitches and he's coming right at you, the guy that comes to mind, a guy, Carson Fulmer, it's asses and elbows.
Yeah, for sure.
Coming at you, and it's competing, and he's talking smack, and which I love. But you've got to be able to have something in there, not only your natural competitiveness, but you've got to be able to get yourself in position to have your routine done. So I had an on deck. I'll just use me for example. And this is what I do with the guys. I try to give them some sort of baseline and then, hey man, take this, use it. Don't take it, throw it away, whatever. Back when you used to have 2 guys allowable on deck, when I would be in the hole, I'd have a certain set of things that I'd do getting my body ready. And I would do the same count every single time. So for instance, I had 2 bats and I'd take it here. And I every time I got to the top, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'd switch hands 1, 2, 5, 5. And then I'd go over the top and I'd have 5. And then I'd take my swings. I'd take 5 practice swings with the heavy bat. And then I would go to timing the pitcher on deck. And it would be trigger to swing when I saw elevation up and trigger to take when I saw elevation down, because I couldn't see in and out from the side, but I could see up and down. So I would go through this routine religiously, and it got me ready. I liked it. I thought it was good for me. It worked for me. But what happens when you're leading off the inning? What happens when the guy goes up there and you're on deck, or in this case nowadays there's not 2 guys on deck, but now you go up there and you just ran in from center field and you got your helmet on and you barely got time to get to the on deck circle, and the guy before you goes up and makes first pitch, first out, and you haven't done anything of your routine, nothing. So that tends to sometimes put guys into a state where it's really going fast. The game's moving fast because they haven't been settled. They haven't got to look at them what does the shape look like? Like nothing. They don't have anything. So they're naked to the gods. And so that creates a recipe for disaster or, lack of success. Your opportunity to succeed goes down when the game's racing on you. And so to understand the importance of that, and if that's something that affects you, then you better sprint from center field, get your helmet. Don't worry about high-fiving your teammates and grabbing a bubble gum or a power bar. Get your ass to the bat rack, get your helmet, get your bat, get your gloves, get whatever else it is you have, and get to that on-deck circle as fast as you can so you can get your routine done, so that if the guy does go up there and make first pitch, first out, you've done everything. So you're ready to go. The game now slows down. Your routine's over. You're good to go. Now, I always went to a hybrid routine. Guy that's working fast, guy that's in a slide step. I had my thing, just going to slide step. I had my thing where I'd get in the box and I'd go in, middle, away, big breath, just things that I did. Well, if a guy's working fast and he's got slide step and he's not methodical, I don't have time for all of those. So maybe I get one. It's the away part with my breath, and now I'm ready. So I always had something to go to if that guy was rushing me, which ultimately put the power in my hands. I wasn't giving it to the guy on the mound I'm trying to kill, if that makes sense. So I was in control of me. It didn't matter weather. It didn't matter fan. The pitcher could do whatever you want. You can go as fast as you want. I'm ready to hit. You can't get me, so that just gave me the mental, I felt like gave me a mental edge. So those kinds of things I try to give to our guys to help them, hey man, create a routine, create a hybrid routine, start big moves as the pitcher starts to get into getting his signs and starting to get into the rubber. Now it's more medium moves. And now as he starts to come into the set position, now it's smaller moves. So I'm ready to react if he slide steps or if he goes leg lift, all those things. I have adaptability to be able to combat what he's trying to do to me, which is disrupting timing of a hitter. That's the name of the game. And so those routines are critical, and they all work different for different people.
Sure.
Randomization, keeping them fresh, not bored. Kind of like I'm boring you guys, so to speak.
No, get out of here.
We try to keep it fun. Base running, for instance, kind of the traditional way to teach base running is get 4 bases out there, 4 groups of 4. Okay, here we go. Fake steal, fake steal, fake steal. One thing I really, there's a place for that. When you're setting the baseline and you're teaching and you're just getting the stuff in, those things are really important because you want to isolate and compartmentalize the teaching aspect. So again, you're getting in the terminology, you're getting in the timing, what it looks like. Yes, that's good. No, that's not good. That's not what it looks like. Better. Here we go. Good job. All those things matter. But as you kind of move through where guys are starting to get comfortable and understanding what's being asked of them, we like to kind of transition into maybe it's 3 bases. but we'll angle them out, from the regular first base, and we'll kind of angle them out, kind of moving towards center. But each base will then become like a one and move. And so let's say, for instance, we're doing a base running deal where we're working at first and second and third, but maybe all the bases are actually first base, but they all have different objectives. So the base from the back is we're working at regular foot strikes. So it's see the pitcher's foot land, get your secondary, hard back, square up, eyes to the catcher, no back picks. Then they move up to the middle base. So you're working from back to front. Now we work from the middle base, and now it's steal jumps, must steal. So we're looking, boom, we go 2 hard steps, good, peel, eyes in, follow fly to ball. Now they come back and they peel back to the front base, and now they transition in like a hit and run. So they hit and run, hitter at homes, he's wand controlling, we're running, we're transitioning to second. So each base from back to front represents something different, which just kind of, it keeps them moving, it keeps them fresh. And what it really does is it changes. It's not just the amoeba where I have to think about, okay, this technique. Okay, now I'm moving to this one. Now this is what's required of me. This is what's required of me. And I got to move. Now I get out there and I'm doing something different and something different and something different, which happens in baseball. You as a hitter, you go in there, looking for a pitch, runner at first base, ball in the dirt, guy gets to second. Game plan changes. Pitches might change and probably will with an open base. Balk, guy moves to third, infield comes in. So like within 3 pitches, I've gone from one game plan to, it's similar. You're still getting a pitch you can hit and you can drive, but the objectives have changed in 3 pitches. So for us to be able to change the rhythm and rhyme of what they're doing within that training structure is just kind of prepping their brains for when they get in the game and they got to stick and move and be able to be quick recovery athletes and adapt and adjust to things that happen during the game. And then kind of the third piece I think you asked me about was kind of in-season massaging, psychology, all those kind of things. And
sure. Mm-hmm.
For me, the game is the game. I try to stay as much out of the way as possible, meaning like not trying to coach them up with necessarily their swing, but really trying to give them an idea. Hey, think about like last year I worked from the dugout, called the offense from the dugout. And I had coached third base, 24 years I've been coaching. I was never in the dugout. I've always coached third base. And so I came into the dugout to run the offense. And the thing that I really appreciated was my ability to be able to prep our guys for what might be coming, what we might be doing, what the game situations might end up doing by the time they work themselves into the box versus, hey, these guys are in the pen. You might get this lefty. Just start thinking moves ahead, not playing checkers, but playing chess. And I really appreciated that, giving them signs before they even got in the box, hey, we're going to do this. And, this is what we're doing, and so when you get out there, be ready for this. Or, hey, do you like bunt? Do you like late bunt over early show? Like, what do you like? Trying to just put them in the best position to be successful. So that would be the most I try to get in their way. Certainly they got questions like, hey, what'd you see there? We share information. What were you feeling? What did you see? Here's what I saw. So those things happen, but they're in brief spurts because as a coach, your brain's a lot of different places. And so you just kind of compartmentalize and you try to make quick, fast moving adjustments. And then, being available to them before the game, during BP, after BP, those things are important because it just allows them an opportunity to get with you one-on-one. And whether you say anything or not, just be there, whether it's flips or throwing to them or feed a machine, I think it's really important. And so being confident, if you're not confident as a hitter or don't believe what you're doing, you're going to have a hard time. Your slope's going to be pretty slippery. And so I really just try to foster their confidence, not in a false way, but just reinforcing the things that they're doing well and not necessarily ignoring the things that aren't going right. But it's like the guy that gets in there and he's smashing line drives and he's just hitting. It's line drive. Yeah, good. And then he takes a bad swing and you get the, oh God. And he gets out of the box. That's And so my encouragement to them is like, bro, you just hit 6-7 flights with great backspin, and you didn't say a word, like it was all good. And then you take 1 out of 7 swings that you didn't like and the world's ending. Like, so my thing to them is like, would you take six hits out of 7 at bats? They say, yeah. I said, you just had 6 hits out of 7 at bats. So you could take that for what it's worth. So just trying to shift their brains from a negative to a positive and just trying to rearrange their thoughts. So yeah, they do have a high standard and they do have high demands in themselves. And you want that because it's not like, hey, I struck out. Hey, yippee. Let me feel real good about that. I tried. I gave it the old college try. That's IROC. Right.
Sure.
We want guys to be angry and competitive and have a high standard. But at the same time, there becomes a law of diminishing returns where you're unrealistic about what really happened and you're beating yourself up to the point where like, bro, forgive yourself. Like, let's move on, man. Like let's evaluate this later, but we got to be quick recovery and we got to stay on the good because you're going to have a whole lot of bad. And you just need 1 pitch to beat that pitcher. He needs 3. So.
Oh, I love that. So good. So, one of the things that you hit on was you are in the dugout, and I love being in the dugout to talk with those guys about those different situations. And, for those coaches who are, who have that opportunity to be able to do that, what are some different things that let me rewind, because you talked about some of them of, hey, watch for this situation may come up here. And I'm sure those guys appreciate you because they may be surprised, but less likely to be with you in their ear. But what about the guy that is coming up that may have had a bad at bat last AB? Sometimes you just kind of let them ride with it, but sometimes you've got to step out and ask the question, hey, like, what do you got? What do you see? What are you feeling? Are there any good questions to get them to just kind of open up about their thought process? A friend and I were talking about that the other day, and those are the 3 that I usually use, but I didn't know if you had any that you really liked, just questions to get them to open up about their thought process after a bad AB.
Yeah, I think those kind of questions they provoke conversation. It's the worst thing that can happen is that the guy goes in a shell. It allows them the opportunity to, maybe you think they're being hard on themselves, or maybe you think they're carrying baggage and they're being quiet. And all of a sudden you ask them this question and they give you a hell of an answer. And you're like, okay, you're good. Cause I don't know how many times in my coaching career, I've thought something about what a player was thinking. And that came out in a negative way, post at bat or post fielding or post pitch or something to where ultimately I put myself in a bad situation where the player then may lose faith, trust, love, the things that matter, because he's sitting there thinking to himself like, dude, I was good. Like I was thinking about this. I was in the right spot. My brain, I was realistic about my failure, but you just pounded me on that. And
yeah,
I think it gives them the opportunity to shock you that like, damn, he did get past this. He is focused. He does have a good plan. He is watching the game, and they surprise you with those kind of things. So I think those leading questions give them an opportunity to do that are good. And I think as human beings, I think baseball players, which most coaches are baseball players, because it's such a social game. I think for the most part, we've got pretty good feel for people. And I think when you ask those questions and you get a non-response or a response that the body language is just screaming like, man, I need a hug, or like put your arm around me, or, say something that's going to, not that I'm going to, not everything's, you're going to have, it's not always going to be feel good, but like sometimes that dude just needs like, put my arm around his shoulder and be like, all that hard work you do, man. You're a dude. You're a real guy, man. You're 0 for 3, but this is the at-bat. You're going to win the game. I mean, how many times you told a guy after 2 at-bats, like, hey, man, it's going to come back around to you in the 9th. You're going to win this game for us. And it happens, And so I think as a player, I speak for myself. Like there are times you don't believe in yourself, but the guy that you work with every day is believing in you. That's powerful because somebody's still there no matter how crappy you're doing or how bad you feel, that person still believes in you.
No
and
doubt.
You know the type of quality work, and you know the relationship's real. And those things get you over the hump when you're not believing. So I think that's where our biggest power comes from, is the relationship with the player and the work that you put in, that they believe in you. And there's times in careers and places I've been in, years I've been in, where that hasn't been the best version of me, and I haven't done a good enough job. And I wish I could go back and do better and those kinds of things, but you can't. And so you try to learn from them, just like the players are trying to learn from them. And you try to use those experiences to continue to pay it forward with the guys that you have.
I love hearing that. And I think if you're a coach listening and you haven't been there, then just wait, it's coming. But game has a way of humbling us, right?
Yeah.
So the next thing that I want to get into is, at Division I schools, and I think most colleges now, with Synergy, you guys are able to get a ton of stuff on other teams and other pitchers. So I would love, with what you can you walk us through, just if you're game planning for a series in the weekend, what does that look like for you guys? Because I know at the high school level, there's some different things that we can pick out. And with you guys and with the pro level, there's an infinite amount of things that you can pick out. But what have you found to be the most helpful and useful for the players that you have?
Really good question. The thing I love about it is, when we played there, well, I speak for myself, I'm a dinosaur, but there was no video. So we went into games blind. Like, what does the guy look like? What does the shape look like? Those things are now eliminated. And I think one of the things that I like is my ability off of Synergy to be able to bring in my computer and hook it up to our big screen TV that's in here and just be able to roll through the loop of the starting pitchers during the week. Those things are valuable. It provides opportunities for the guys to see that rhythm and see those shapes and just kind of smell it and see it. And then it allows me, with these awesome machines behind me, to be able to program them in a way that's as close to those shapes as possible. And, if a guy's heavy off speed and, of those 8 pitches, maybe 5 of those are off speed pitches and, 5 are breaking balls, 1's a changeup and 2 are fastballs, so I'm trying to get them simulated for what they're going to see for that different day. And then the other ability that is really cool is to see their bullpen. I always start with the starting pitching. When I'm doing my reports off Synergy, I'll go to the starting pitching. I'll go to the top guys out of the pen. And those are the arms I really focus on the most, and then get the other arms as I go through my prepping and planning phase for the guys. But I want to get the information that they're going to see the most of as early as I can, so that they have that and are more prepared or as prepared as they can be moving into that Friday. Just kind of how I go about it. And so I'm getting everything from, leg times at first with the runner at first, leg time runners at second. I'm watching what they do in first and thirds. I'm watching, does the pitcher field the bunts and throw everything away? Can we bunt on that guy? Do they have a safety protection? What counts they're picking in? How many times they pick in a row? A million. There's so many things that you can get off that. When Synergy first came out, it felt like it was cheating because you can take the 3-second clips and make them 10 seconds. So you could go into the catcher's deal and start getting signs and taps, and guys have made a living doing that. And there's been some adjustments from Synergy and so forth, just in camera angles. Coaches have picked up on that, and now they won't let their camera guys zoom in that early. And so there was a lot of those cat and mouse things that went on early. But there's things you can't hide. You can't hide the shapes. You can't hide the percentages of when they're throwing pitches and counts, and getting a feel for how the pitching coach calls the game, what they're doing when they're winning games versus when they're behind. Sure. Just things that matter in a game to be able to try to help your team be in the best position to win games just on little things that synergy you'll be able to provide. Times
cool.
catcher to first. Do they pick to third with a left-handed pitcher? Does the left-handed pitcher have a fake step off to first, turn to third, and throw? Just things like, what do they do?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's the really real value, and it's really kind of turned it into a Major League Baseball thing where there are no secrets.
Right.
I think everybody has it now, and for good reason. It's a great resource.
No doubt. Well, I've got a couple of questions before you go, and these are just more of opinion based, what you're learning, what you're going through, and quick hitters. Since you're a hitting coach, I'll say rapid fire for the pitching coaches, but quick hitters for you. But the first one is, what is something that you have learned lately or something that's caught your interest lately that you're really excited to learn more about?
Ooh, I know you gave me these list of questions, and shame on me for not.
Okay.
I'm not prepared. It's going fast
that's caught
on
your
me.
interest lately.
But I'm going to get a breath, and I'm going to use my routine.
There you go.
I really don't know. I don't really have a really great answer.
That's the time of year we're in right now, right? Focusing on the dudes.
It is. I'm not. I would love to just go to the default and say like technology, but I'm a little bit of a dinosaur too. It's ball meet bat. It's compete against the ball and those kind of things. But
that stuff matters.
I think just being able to. I really enjoy going to the ABCA kind of video archives. I don't really go to it for personal reasons. As that time of the year, I don't see my family a lot, and so I try to use that time for my family. But I do like to go on and listen to people talk about. I love the coach that wins the national championship, and you listen just to his story and the team story and pick up on things there, and then just to be able to. Hear other guys' philosophy on infield play, hitting, how they're adapting their technology into their hitting, but still at the end of the day, I feel I don't try to use things that I don't really know a whole lot about right away, just because you don't want to go into a situation and teach something that you're teaching erroneously or you don't have a great grasp for, because the buy-in's not going to be there. Because if I'm not versed on it and I'm not knowing in those kind of things, I'm going to have a hard time being able to sell that to the players as why it's really important. And so, I think just being able to talk to different coaches and be able to listen and just like affirmation of like, okay, I do those things, or I say these things, or man, I say this, but it's a different way. And so just kind of that confirmation of that, yeah, man, we're in this for the right reasons. And we're doing a lot of the same things to try to be successful, I think are really important, just in terms of, every year you go by, it's easy to just go, well, we're going to do the same thing over and over because we've always done it that way. So I think in a vague kind of answer, just trying to continue to evolve just how you go about your training and how you go about dealing with players, because those things are ever changing, and they have in my 25 years. Things you did 20 years ago you can't even sniff doing today. So adapt. So
I love it. So that would almost be the answer to the next question, which is, what is something that you used to believe that you've changed your mind about? And that could be whether the psychology behind it, practice, design, drills that you used to believe in, just anything and everything of you used to do something, but you pivoted because, you either realized it didn't work or it didn't work for a certain group or, whatever that could be.
Yep. I think the game is the game. It's still 60 feet, 6 inches. It's still 90 feet. Like the way the game is played, just in terms of the end result, are the same. I think the thing that has changed, that I'm glad has changed, is just the things I've learned is, the method of discipline, the method of how respect is earned. Those things have changed. Just because your title as coach doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get respect. Yelling is one tool in the tool belt, not one to be gone to as a consistent hammer. I think these young guys today, they want to be loved. They want to feel good, and that's good. They don't want the stress sometimes. Sometimes that stress stresses them out. So they do need that old school, like, come on, man, push, push, push. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, and that's okay, because the inmates don't run the asylum. Someone's got to be the boss. But I think especially here with Coach Jewett, the thing that I've really learned is just because a player calls you coach doesn't mean he respects you. I showed up here and guys are wearing guy wearing his hat backwards, or guys have their shirts off, or guys are calling you by your first name, which when I grew up was a pro thing. It wasn't a college thing. You called your coach. And when you got to pro ball, the pro ball guys ridiculed you and said, don't call me coach. You can call me by my first name. And so that kind of environment I wasn't used to. And when I got here, I think the thing that I really appreciated was that these guys call you your nickname or your name, but they don't love you any less or respect you any less. I think it's how you treat them. It's your consistency, their trust level with you. Are you going to be there for them? And I think once all those things are checked off for them, I think then you can get after them. You really can. It's show me you care, not show me how much you know. And I think early on and back in the day, you did things because the coach said it and he was the coach, and if we're going to go out and run 100 miles because he's pissed, that's what we were going to do. And we didn't like it, but we're going to have to do it. And I think that part of where the game has gone, I think is a positive. Where it will and can take a turn for the worse is when you fail as an adult and a coach to draw the line and say, okay, it's no longer, it's not a game anymore. There's accountability here. There has to be a way. There has to be a no. You know what I mean? So the inmates can't run the asylum. So I think the biggest change has been how you deal with players. Kids are still kids. I think if you asked our parents and the grandparents before them, they would say the exact same things that we say, or not we necessarily, but it's just that time-honored tradition of kids these days. It's what it is. And so I do think it's good for the game that it's forced a lot of the old coaches to have to reevaluate the method with which they do things. And I think that is important, and it's where we are. So if you want to keep coaching, you gotta adapt and adjust, or you can be replaced, or you'll have to get out of the game and do something different.
No doubt. Well, I love hearing that, and I love the growth that you've brought to the table today. A guy with 25 years experience. I mean, it's yep. And keep putting them in. Thanks. And so it's always good to get to speak with guys like you who are seasoned and are continuing to learn in the process, just like we all should be. But Jay, I appreciate your time, man. I've loved getting to learn from you today, and I will link your contact info in the show notes. But I do want to give you the opportunity to leave our guests with something or anything or nothing. So I'm going to mute myself. But is there anything else that you'd like to tell our listeners before you go?
No, I think be true to yourself. Everybody's different. Don't try to coach like somebody else. Take bits and pieces of the people that you've been with, the good, and try to implement those within your strategies. Take the bad or the things maybe that not necessarily the bad, but the things that you wouldn't do, and take those with you too. Because if you're in an environment that's you feel it's not healthy or it's not good, I think the natural thing, and we all get caught up in it, and I'm no different. But the negativity part of that can really eat you away. And so to be able to step back and try to understand, like, this is the path that I'm headed in. There's a reason this is going on, whether it's good or bad. And just use all those experiences to be able to help somebody else within your profession and our profession when they're struggling. Remember what it was like to be a player, help the player. Remember what it was like to be a grad assistant. Help him. Remember what it's like to be a volunteer when you're scraping and clawing and barely making ends meet and doing camps and lessons to survive. And man, I wish I was being a recruiting coordinator. I'd love to work at this school and, help them through that and help that young guy that wants to try to be a recruiting coordinator be like, look, it's timing. It's not always on your watch. You just got to keep plugging away and keep learning and keep earning that and getting lucky. The game is timing, big timing. And again, I'll say it, it's not always on your watch. Things don't happen when you want them to. And, hell, I want to be a head coach. I started out as a head coach at a JUCO and haven't sniffed that again in 23 years. So it's not always on my watch. If somebody out there someday is going to give me an opportunity to be able to be the steward for a program, I would be thrilled about that. But I work with four of the best people I could ask to work with, and I've been fortunate enough to do that a long time with a lot of other different people in different programs as well. And just keep plugging along. It's not about the logo. It's not about your league. It's not about your title. We'd like it to be about our pay, but it's not always about the pay either. If you're really digging in and having a hard time with it, try to get back to the basis of why you're doing this. And for me, it was to give back to a game that gave a lot to me and try to help these kids. And I didn't want to sit behind a desk with a suit and tie either. So,
no doubt.
Just be yourself.
Thank you for listening to Ahead of the Curve. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a rating or review wherever you are listening. I also wanted to remind you that you can find the video portion at the AOTC channel on stickandball.tv. Have a great week.